It's 2 a.m. You're in bed, phone glowing in your face, Zillow open. You see it, cozy starter home. Translation: old carpet, 2004 appliances, a kitchen that still remembers Obama's first term. Price: $500,000. And you stare at it, thinking maybe you misread your paycheck. Maybe HR forgot a zero. Maybe the American dream got upgraded to a premium subscription and nobody told you. Here's the truth. You didn't miss anything. The math is broken. If you appreciate conversations that actually respect arithmetic instead of hype, make sure you're subscribed. This channel is for people who think long-term, not emotionally. And today, we're not talking about what the bank says you can borrow. We're talking about what you can afford without living in a permanent low-grade anxiety attack. Because nobody wants to admit this out loud, but the middle class in America right now is making six figures and still feeling broke. And that's not a vibe issue. That's arithmetic. Let's zoom out. In the 1970s, the average American home cost about 2.5 times the median household income. Today, in cities like Seattle, Austin, Denver, Nashville, parts of Florida, suburban California, we're looking at 6, 7, sometimes 8 times income. That's not inflation. That's structural separation between wages and assets. This is not your imagination. This is economic drift. Mike from Ohio. He's 42, works in logistics, makes $92,000 a year. Solid guy. Coaches his kids' baseball team. In 2003, his dad bought a house for $165,000, making $55,000. Today, that same house is worth $480,000. Mike runs the numbers and laughs, not because it's funny, but because it feels like the ladder got pulled up mid-climb. And here's the kicker. Mike isn't broke. He's middle class. But middle class today means high income, low margin. Boomers bought homes with one income and a mustache. Millennials bought homes with 2 incomes and anxiety. Gen Z is buying vibes and crypto courses. And you, 35 to 65, you're stuck in the squeeze zone where you make too much for sympathy and not enough for comfort. Now, it signals leverage risk. For men, a home traditionally meant territory, security, status, a base of operations. For women, psychologically, it often represents nesting, safety, future planning, a controlled environment for raising children. When housing becomes financially unstable, that tension bleeds into relationships because nothing stresses a marriage like a mortgage that feels like a hostage situation. Everyone says just put 20% down. On $500,000, that's $100,000 cash. Average American savings account? Around $8,000. That's not a gap, that's the Grand Canyon. Even if you save 10% of an $84,000 salary, which most people don't, you're looking at 10, 12 years to hit $100K, assuming home prices freeze in time like a Netflix documentary. They won't. So what do people do? They put down 5% or 10%. Then PMI kicks in, which is basically a monthly penalty for not already being wealthy. Mark and Lisa, combined income $145,000. They saved $52,000 over 7 years. They're proud. They should be. They put 10% down. But now PMI is $320 a month. They didn't feel it on paper. They feel it every single month. That's groceries. That's a car payment. That's 2 kids' extracurriculars. That's date nights that slowly disappear. Nobody posts on Instagram, just paid PMI again, feeling unstoppable. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You put 10% down, $450,000 mortgage, at current rates around $2,850 per month. But that's just the headline. Add property tax, $500, insurance, $300, maintenance, $420, PMI, $300. Real number, $4,370 per month. Every month, before furniture, before HOA, before your kid breaks a window. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You put 10% down,
$450,000 mortgage, at current rates around $2,850 per month. But that's just the headline. Add property tax, $500, insurance, $300, maintenance, $420, PMI, $300. Real number, $4,370 per month. Every month, before furniture, before HOA, before your kid breaks a window.
The HVAC moment. Tom and Rachel, household income $160K, bought the house, felt proud. First winter, HVAC dies, $5,800 repair. Credit card. That was the first time they fought about money in 5 years. Not because they're irresponsible, because they had no margin. When 45 to 50% of your take-home goes to housing, your nervous system stays activated. You don't feel rich, you feel exposed, and that leaks into everything. Men start working more hours not because they're ambitious, but because they're anxious. Women feel unstable not because the relationship is weak, but because the foundation feels fragile. A house is supposed to create safety, but when the math is stretched, it creates pressure. To afford this safely, you need $187,000. To safely afford $4,370 at 28% rule, you need about $187,000 household income. Even using bank's 43% threshold, still $150,000. Only about 10 to 20% of households earn that, meaning for 80% of Americans, a $500,000 starter home is mathematically aggressive, not aspirational, aggressive. David and Monica earn $155K. They qualify. They buy. Their friends think they're winning. Inside, every purchase is calculated. New tires become a debate. Vacations become spreadsheets. Success on paper. Tension in real life. Millennials were told, just buy less avocado toast. Gen Z is told, just start a side hustle in the metaverse. Meanwhile, a roof costs $500,000. After taxes and retirement, that $640K couple takes home about $9,500. Housing, $4,370. Left, $5,130. Subtract cars, fuel, utilities, groceries, insurance, kids, subscriptions. Now you're at $1,500 margin. That's not wealth. That's a tightrope. One emergency away from credit cards. And here's where it hits psychologically. When your financial margin disappears, your options disappear. And when options disappear, your confidence shrinks. And confidence affects everything. Career moves, entrepreneurship, leadership at home, attraction dynamics, because stability is attractive, not flashy wealth, stability. Let's be honest. In America, owning a home still signals competence. Women interpret it as provision and future stability. Men interpret it as success and progress. But when the house becomes a stress source instead of a foundation, it flips the script. I know a guy, 51, makes $210,000. Big house, but zero liquidity. He admitted to me privately he feels trapped. He can't pivot careers, can't scale risk, can't relax. The house owns him. That's not alpha. That's leveraged. Real attractiveness long-term is optionality, freedom to choose, freedom to say no, freedom to walk away from bad deals. That's power. Here's the rebellious part. The system profits from transactions, not from your stability. Banks profit when you borrow. Agents profit when you buy. Sellers profit when you stretch. Nobody profits when you walk away. If your household income is below $140,000, you have permission to pause, to rent strategically, to invest instead, to build liquidity, to build margin. Because real wealth is not equity you cannot touch without refinancing. Real wealth is freedom, cash flow, optionality, sleep at night. There is zero shame in saying, this does not make mathematical sense for me right now. That's not quitting. That's discipline. And discipline beats social pressure every time. Because succeeding in life is not about conforming to timelines, it's about winning the math. And math does not care about Instagram. Math does not care about your neighbor's Tesla. Math does not care about generational narratives. It cares about margin. So before you sign anything, before you stretch, before you let ego drive, run the numbers, win the math, then win the house, not the other way around. I'm Derek, and I don't chase trends. I chase leverage. Stay sharp. Before we blame Zillow, before we blame boomers, before we blame the system, let's understand the machine. For 40 years, America ran on declining interest rates. In 1981, mortgage rates were near 18%. Then they fell, and fell, and fell. Every drop in rates made houses affordable monthly, even as prices rose. So people didn't think in price, they thought in payment. And when rates dropped from 7% to 3% in the 2010s, something dangerous happened. Asset inflation exploded. Cheap money inflated houses, stocks, everything. Now we are in the reversal. Rates went from 3% to 7, 8% in under 2 years. That doesn't just double payments, it rewrites affordability. There are millions of Americans sitting on 2.7% and 3% mortgages right now. They cannot sell. Because if they sell and rebuy at 7%, their payment explodes. So inventory stays low. Prices stay high. This is called the lock-in effect. It's economic gridlock. The market is frozen between people who can't sell and people who can't afford to buy. This isn't greed. This is structural math colliding with monetary policy. And when structure shifts, middle class feels it first. Let's get surgical. If instead of buying that $500,000 house, you rent for $2,200 per month, and you invest the difference, let's say $2,000 monthly, at 7% annual return, over 20 years, that becomes roughly $1,040,000. Now let's compare. The homeowner builds equity, yes, but they also paid interest, taxes, maintenance, PMI. Opportunity cost. Homeownership is not free wealth. It is leveraged for savings, and leverage cuts both ways. The renter who invested. Chris, 44, earns $130,000. Everyone told him to just buy. He rented, invested aggressively instead. Today, his brokerage account is $780,000. He has zero housing stress. He is liquid, flexible, mobile. His friends own houses, but he owns options, and options are underrated in America. If you've ever felt that quiet pressure when looking at these numbers, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how this looks across the country. For generations, home ownership meant arrival. It was proof you made it. But that identity was built in a time when homes cost 2 to 3x income. Today, buying may signal achievement, but financially it can signal compression, and that creates psychological tension. Men often equate home ownership with provision and legacy. Women often associate it with security and family structure. When buying becomes financially reckless, the emotional symbolism conflicts with financial reality. That conflict causes stress. And financial stress is one of the top predictors of marital strain. Not infidelity, not politics, money. Because money equals perceived safety, and perceived safety equals emotional stability. Some people say, this is just like 2008. No, 2008 was credit excess. Today is supply restriction. In 2008, people bought houses they couldn't afford with fake income documentation. Today, buyers are more qualified. The issue isn't reckless lending, it's affordability compression. That means we are not looking at the same type of crash. We are looking at stagnation. And stagnation hurts the middle class quietly, not explosively. If you're 35 to 65, this hits differently. You're not 25 with roommates. You have kids, retirement horizon, aging parents, health considerations. Your margin matters more. At 42, a financial mistake costs a decade. At 55, a financial mistake costs freedom. And this is why stretching into a house for ego or pressure can be devastating long term. Because compounding works both ways. Growth compounds, stress compounds, debt compounds. Now here's where we pivot. Not doom, strategy. If buying doesn't make sense, what does? Increase liquidity first, max retirement accounts, build taxable investments, reduce lifestyle inflation, maintain mobility. Because mobility in the next decade may be more valuable than property. AI shifts jobs, industries move, remote work evolves. Being tied to a $4,500 payment reduces adaptability, and adaptability equals power. The American dream was never about the house. It was about independence. And independence requires margin. If buying aligns with your income and math, buy intelligently. But if it doesn't, do not let cultural pressure bankrupt your peace. There is no shame in renting. There is no shame in waiting. There is only shame in ignoring arithmetic. Because wealth is not about owning a roof, it is about owning your decisions. And the strongest financial move in 2026 might not be buying. It might be building strength first. That's rebellion. Not against the system, against emotional impulse. Win the math, then win the house. If this kind of strategic thinking resonates with you, this is what we do here. Long-term leverage, clear math, calm decisions. Subscribe if you're building, not reacting.